Good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in tonight for the first episode of Real Talk. Real Talk is a monthly show hosted by the Living Legacy Foundation of Maryland that focuses on various aspects or various topics within the field of organ donation and transplantation. My name is Adam Falzerano, and I am the volunteer coordinator at the LLF. I have the pleasure of introducing you to our moderator tonight, Durante Briggs. Each month, Real Talk will be moderated by one of our volunteer Donate Life ambassadors who all have a special connection to donation and/or transplantation. Durante L. Briggs is the founder and CEO of Veterans Transplantation Association. He is a highly decorated, honorably discharged Desert Storm, Desert Shield veteran and a former hemodialysis patient who received a kidney transplant approximately 6 years ago at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. He serves as an ambassador for several organizations, including the American Association of Kidney Patients, the United Network for Organ Sharing, and the Living Legacy Foundation of Maryland. As a kidney patient advocate, Mr. Briggs volunteers his time throughout the community in Baltimore City, sharing his story and education about the importance of kidney health, proper care while on dialysis, post-transplant, and organ donation. In addition, he volunteers at the Washington, D.C. Veterans Medical Center Renal Unit. Mr. Briggs also participates in the Transplant Games of America as a member of the Team Maryland transplant team, and recently participated in the World Games in Malaga, Spain, representing Team USA. Mr. Briggs formed the Veterans Transplantation Association in August of 2016 and is dedicated to giving back to veterans awaiting transplant and those who have already received any form of transplant. VTA provides educational resources that include organ, tissue, and eye donation information and information related to kidney, liver, heart, and lung disease, which could lead to transplantation. VTA also provides information on veterans benefits. I will now turn the show over to you, Durante.
Hey, Adam, thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's great being here. I'm going to take this time to introduce the speakers tonight and read this short bio. First, we have Aisha Johnson. Aisha Johnson is the Community Outreach Manager at the Living Legacy Foundation of Maryland and founder of the Decision Project. Aisha works with her team to increase awareness of the need for organ, eye, and tissue donation throughout Maryland. Aisha is an active member of the American Public Health Association and a committee member on the International Institutional Review Board at Sinai Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland. Next, we have Latrice Price. Latrice Price is the Community Outreach Specialist at the Living Legacy Foundation of Maryland, where she engages in the community in discussion about the importance of organ, eye, and tissue donation. Latrice has been with the LLF for over 20 years, where she has served on several local and national committees. Next, we have Jessica Sharum. Jessica Sharum is the manager of the organ recovery team at the Living Legacy Foundation, overseeing the organ recovery coordinators and donation services technicians who facilitate the organ recovery process at the hospitals throughout Maryland. Jessica has a bachelor's degree in anthropology as well as in nursing and has worked for the Living Legacy Foundation for the past 10 years in clinical roles as well as in the hospital service department. Next, we have Tanise Love. Tanise Love is the manager of the Multicultural Affairs for Donate Life in North Carolina. She is responsible for developing and maintaining statewide community outreach and awareness in multicultural and faith-based communities across North Carolina as it relates to organ, eye, and tissue donation. Her work has led her to develop 7 statewide partnerships with historically Black colleges and universities, educate faith-based congregations through both staff-directed and volunteer-led activities, and also worked with numerous professional and community groups. She currently leads the Decision Project in North Carolina. Next, we have Sonia Taylor. Sonia Taylor is an experienced management and telecommunication professional, providing strategy and creative leadership in the areas of electronic security, technology, project management, budgeting, financial management, and organizational development. She is currently employed with Maryland Department of Juvenile Service as Electronic Security System Director. Sonia has been an active member and ambassador for the Living Legacy Foundation since 2007. Tonight, we are here to discuss the Decision Project and what that means in the African American community. My first question is for Aisha. Aisha, you are the original founder and creator of the Decision Project. Tell us, what is the Decision Project all about?
Well, thank you, Durante. I love the fact that I got the title of creator and founder of the Decision Project, but to be honest, this was a team effort by my staff at the Living Legacy Foundation, my colleagues like Jessica Schramm, Tanise, and many others to make sure this was something that was bigger than we thought. So to answer your question, back in 2016, the Decision Project was originated from an idea of how we can change the way we were doing things and outreach. What was the unconventional way to reach our communities that had the lack of knowledge about being an organ donor and how that can help save someone's life. So it's about empowering, inspiring, and sharing your decision of being an organ donor.
Wonderful, wonderful. My next question for you. What was your inspiration for starting the Decision Project, and how did it start?
Again, the inspiration was, number one, I was a new manager, and I wanted to make a mark on at Living Legacy and my team. And I was speaking with another manager, and we were thinking about how we can work together, two different departments, but realizing how we could communicate with our audience. And essentially, we looked at our data, and our data showed us that 21215 in Baltimore City had the lowest had the lowest rate of donor designations. And what that means to our audience tonight is that this community or zip code weren't registering to be organ donors at a higher rate than the rest of the state. But we also found it was two parts. That same zip code had the highest number of people waiting for organ transplant. So you can see right there, something was off. Here's a city or an area within a city that had a high need for organ transplant, but they were the same people not registered to be organ donors. So that was the inspiration behind it.
Okay, sounds good. Who needed to be involved and why?
My team, because without them, I can't do anything. But outside of community outreach, it was our hospital partners. And this is where Jessica played a unique role. 21215 sits Sinai Hospital in Baltimore, which is a very large hospital. And if we couldn't get them on board, being in that area, we couldn't get anyone on board. So they were very important at the beginning stages of the Decision Project because they actually opened up the doors for us to reach more people in that community.
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you. Next, Jessica, can you tell us a little bit about your role at Living Legacy Foundation and how you got involved in the Decision Project, and why is it important to have hospitals, leadership involved in a project like this?
Sure. So as Aisha mentioned, at the time that this project started up, I was actually working as a hospital services coordinator at Sinai Hospital, as well as with some of the other hospitals in the area. And this project came along, and I remember the first time we were all brainstorming about what what can we do? How can we reach this community? And we realized it was going to be in many different ways, but a huge avenue was to work with the hospital, because hospitals are not only focused on what's going on inside their hospital, but outside in the community. They're always looking for what can we do to help with preventative care, and have programs in the community as well. So we knew that they would have a lot of connections in the community already that we could kind of piggyback off of or work with. They could help tell us, what has worked in the community and what hasn't as well. So that was a huge factor. And then hospital leadership, obviously they're driving so much of what they're doing in the community. And we knew that how supportive they were of donation in the hospital. So to get their support outside as well, we knew would play a huge role.
I see that the hospital plan being a part of it is really important. Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. Latrice, it sounds like community partnerships have become more important than ever. How have community partnerships and relationships played an important role in this work?
Well, thanks, Durante, for asking that question. Like Jessica and Aisha both mentioned, Sinai Hospital helped play a big part of our partnership with communities in that area outside in the zip code 21215. Also, we have in those two zip codes that Aisha mentioned, we have 3 council people in that area. We've been able to partner with them to host big city events where we've given out backpacks, we've given out food on site. We've partnered with a lot of churches. We've given out some food this coming Monday. We partner with the Pimlico Merchants Association, as well as pastors in that Northwest faith-based area, which is made up of some leaders in that zip code 15, some pastors, some police officers. And it's just been a great partnership to partner with them to host various events in the community, so that people not only know about donation, but see that we there and we care about the community.
Thank you, Latrice. I really miss those days being out there, fellowshipping with community service outreach. COVID-19. Wow. Hopefully,
yes.
Then the community volunteering again. Thank you, Latrice. Tanya, can you please tell us about your connection to donation and transplantation?
So for me, I became involved in 2007, actually, when my nephew was actually killed on the streets of Baltimore. However, before that, in 1994, I was actually had to have a cornea transplant. So I'm actually a cornea transplant recipient. So I got involved in Living Legacy Foundation as a result of my nephew being killed, and he was actually at Sinai Hospital. So the community and the outreach with Living Legacy Foundation and the support team that were at Sinai actually was very helpful in us making that decision for us to have my wishes of my nephew granted, because he decided he wanted to be an organ donor. So because we were right there in that 21215 area code and was able to experience firsthand as a donor family, the relationship between the hospital and the family at a tragic moment, is when I became more involved with Living Legacy Foundation, and also wanted to be able to have my nephew's legacy live on. So as a part of that, I became more involved with Living Legacy Foundation. And because I was so involved during the Sinai Hospital, and as an African American, and being able to understand the importance of having a cornea and how all of that bring it together, I was actually doing more work in the community as a volunteer. And then Aisha asked me if I would think about the Decision Project. And I think it's very important for us, especially in the African American communities, to understand how we can help other families and how we can benefit from being an organ, eye, and tissue donor And I felt that it was very important for me to work hard, especially for that community that needed it in the 21215 area code. And besides the fact that Sinai kind of brought this whole thing together for us. So that's how I became involved with this whole project.
Thank you. It sounds wonderful. And I miss them being out there in the community, volunteering with you. I really do.
Yes.
All right, Latrice, I have another question for you. I know the Living Legacy Foundation has been doing a lot of free food giveaways lately, which I'm sure has been a great help to the people in food deserts and food swamps these days. Can you tell us more about those events and about other ways you've been able to active during this pandemic?
Yes, Durante. So, and when we first started the Decision Project, we did research study, and what some of the people, focus group, and what some of the people told us is that the things that's important to them in that community is that they don't have options for fresh food. They feel like people always coming to the community way and not giving into that community or leaving something good into that community. And so we partner with the Maryland Food Bank to host food giveaways. And so we've hosted several before COVID hit, and we actually had one earlier this year, but we had to cancel because of COVID until we figure out how to work around that. And I'm happy to say we've been able to at least monthly since July. And we are hosting one this coming Monday, October the 19th. So if you're in that Park Heights area, we will be giving away some food on Monday from 10 until it's all gone, with fresh produce as well as meat. Another thing that we most recently did was we partnered with Flow, which is a homeless advocacy organization. We made up care packages to give out to the homeless people, because when we're doing these food giveaways, there were some people who came up to us and said, "Hey, that's great what you're doing, but I can't really use food." And so we found ourselves going through the boxes, just pulling out the fruit so they can at least have some fresh fruit. And so we Living Legacy allowed us to purchase care packages as well as some food. And I got to ride along with Mr. Godfrey, who is the CEO of the Flow organization. And we went out from 8:30 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. and we just ministered to the people that are homeless, just, gave them a care package. We also gave some of our old t-shirts we had from Fun Run, our Fun Run last year. We provided people with t-shirts, and as we left some of the locations, people were already putting the t-shirts on. So that's it's been great that we've been able to do that during the pandemic.
That's a beautiful thing, giving back to those homeless people in the community. That's great. That is really great. Tanise, as a leader for Donate Life North Carolina, how did you learn about the Decision Project, and what inspired you to want to be a part of it?
Yeah, so it was a really exciting time at Donate Life North Carolina, because in 2016, a number of organizations related to transplant came together to actually create my position of minority and faith-based outreach manager. We had seen a large gap when you think about the number of minorities waiting for a life-saving gift. At the time, it was over 50% of the waiting. So through my hiring and really building the program from the ground up, we had some traction. Things were working well. But we also noticed that a lot of individuals, a lot of organizations, a lot of communities weren't really receptive to our message. So what we did was we took a little over a year to do a statewide research study of over 600 African-American participants to just better understand, if we're communicating about organ, eye, and tissue donation, how do you want to hear from us? What type of people do you want to see if it comes to an ad or a brochure in a waiting room? So we really kind of went to the community, helped them learn more about who we are. We pulled over 100 different images across images and videos across the web from partners across the nation for this study. And we just took time to survey them, to research them, and to better understand. So now that we kind of had what the community wanted to see, they were communicated to about organ, eye, and tissue donation, we needed some type of branding. We needed something, like Aisha mentioned earlier, that could stick. And what's great about Aisha, her team, and the Decision Project, not only is it the branding, it's definitely eye-catching, it's ear-catching, but the authenticity, and then also as we're approaching communities, it really changes the way that you're building relationships. So taking that grassroots initiative, meeting communities where they're at, understanding them first before even asking for anything. So once we heard about the program, the Decision Project, at a 2017, I believe, conference, we were floored. I wasn't even there. My executive director actually texted me in Aisha's workshop and was just like, we have to try this. Like, I think this is it. So once we had all of the research, we have the solid research, and now we have this beautiful blossoming partnership with the Living Legacy Foundation. We decided to kind of pivot the model. So for us, the model was really focused on branding. So versus focusing on a particular zip code, we pivoted and used it kind of as our multicultural branding statewide. So anytime we were in any community, if we were in minority and multicultural communities, we're using the Decision Project and looking for these grassroots partnerships, while still, of course, obviously highlighting Donate Life North Carolina as well. And we found that it just worked really, really well, kind of really changing our perspective. We had never really done that type of outreach in the past, and we found that people were really receptive to the message. And so that's kind of how it started. And ever since, we really just blossomed from there. We've done everything from partnerships with the North Carolina Office of Minority Health, HBCUs, as mentioned in my bio. It's just been a really, really great experience, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Wow. I see that this is a great partnership between Living Legacy Foundation and Donate Life North Carolina.
Yes, yes, yeah.
All right. This next question is for you, Denise and Aisha. What have you found to be the most successful in your communities?
So I'll go. So for me, I think I have to say two things. One, actually, before I was even approached about the Decision Project, I had started to talk with C.W. Williams Health Center here in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is actually where I live. And they are one of the city's longest standing federally designated health centers serving low-income communities. And then also that area, those few DMV stations around the center itself, we saw that the registration numbers weren't really there as well. And so we decided to just approach them and ask them, again, grassroots, coming to them, what do you need? Versus, hey, can I come in and set up a table, or can I educate your constituents? It was really me trying to take the time to learn more about the center, more about my contact there, more about the community. And because of that, we just built this beautiful partnership. We were able to participate in multiple events. Some of the biggest events were a backpack drive, modeling from the Living Legacy Foundation. We were able to provide bags for over 1,000 of their visitors. So while being able to, of course, introduce information about organ, eye, and tissue donation, we were also able to help save the center the cost on those bags and other things like that. And so from that investment, they began to build trust in me. And it was exciting to learn about what they were doing in the community. I learned about a huge luncheon that they had with very notable guests, and I was invited. And from there, building more partnerships. So that partnership is solid and steady, and was really exciting. But the other one that I was excited about that happened last Christmas season was a partnership with the Park Church, and again, in Charlotte, North Carolina. And they're a very long-standing, over 100 years old church in the community. and their faith leaders were looking to better interact with young people in their community. And so getting in and just learning more about the church, their congregants, the people that they serve, I'm like, why don't we do an ugly Christmas sweater party? I mean, everybody loves an ugly Christmas party. I mean, at least I do. So we literally invested in them. We put on the entire event, and our only goal was to bring their young congregants together and their young faith leaders together to enjoy each other, to network with each other, to really help build the cornerstones of what their program would look like. Well, of course, you see us in our shirts, we have our information out. One of our volunteers shared our testimony, but it was really just a beautiful symbiotic relationship that began to build. Who knows what it'll look like with COVID? I don't know if specifically they'll do ugly Christmas sweater, but just those two things blew up not only our contact list, but really built institutional trust. And those two things were really exciting.
Wow, awesome. Aisha?
I think for me, the most successful thing that came out of Decision Project was the fact that we built trust within our community. And it's great to say that, but when we did our focus groups for 2 years, Living Legacy was a trusted source. And we all know that medical mistrust is very high in the African American community, as well as different multicultural communities. So when we got that feedback that our communities knew who we were, specifically Latrice Price, she's been doing what she does for a very long time, and we call her our second mayor at Living Legacy. We call Charlie our first mayor because everybody knows who they are. That for me was the most successful thing. The other thing that was I have three. The second one was when this happened in 2016. It was, I think, this is what community outreach is doing. And to hear 4 years later that our senior leadership team is making this one of our pillars for our strategic planning for the next 2 to 3 years, that to me was success, because I felt now we all understand the importance of not worrying about who's signing up at an event. We're caring for our communities. We're letting them know we're here for them. And if donation is something that they want to think about after the fact, that's all we want, because we really do feel that when you walk away from us, we want you to remember who we were, why we were there, and we're not just coming in and walking away. We learned that when it comes to trust, that you have to stay. So if we have to stay in these communities for the next 10 years, I'm here for it. And then I think number 3 is having people like Tanise Love here with us tonight. That's in North Carolina, not in Virginia or DC or immediate neighbor of ours, but someone who's in North Carolina doing what she does with Decision Project, and that warms my heart. So
Right back.
that's all I have.
Can I add, Durante? To what Aisha was saying about building that relationship. Today, I got a phone call. This melts my heart. When we first started being in a community, was this one lady who was kind of like, whatever, yo. So she called me and said, hey, I want to provide some additional meat for the food giveaway. So she told me, come pick up a check for $300. And I jumped in my car and I wrote down there, and then another church, Tuesday night, we had a meeting. And so she said, hey, call me, I want to help. And so we talked over the phone, and she texted me tonight and said, hey, I'm going to give you $300 to buy more meat for people in the community. So if we hadn't been there to start slowly developing those relationships, I don't know that would happen. So, as it stands, we'll be able to provide meat, which is very important, to about 200 families on Monday.
Wow, that is awesome. Developing that trust in the community, it really means a lot. So basically, the question I'm going to ask is open to anyone that's on the panel. Why do you think people, especially within the African American community in Baltimore, are hesitant to register as an organ donor?
I'll go ahead and start. Well, our research doing focus groups, because we wanted to hear from the community. We didn't want to make assumptions. Lack of knowledge was very high. A lot of people, or a lot of African Americans, don't have a lot of knowledge about organ donation. And I can speak for myself before getting into this field. I didn't know anything about organ donation. Yes, I heard it at the DMV, MVA. I may have not said yes. I don't remember. It wasn't until I got into this field where I started thinking about it. Secondly, a lot of people have a lot of medical mistrust with healthcare institutions. Health disparities in the African American community started a long time ago, and it's not going to go away overnight. Allocation, meaning where are these organs going? So if I'm living in this area, how do I know that my neighbor is getting transplanted? That's something that we have to deal with all the time. And we just have to be open and honest about the allocation process, how we work with the United Network of Organ Sharing, how it's about blood type and matching, and that you can have directed donation to someone that you know. So again, it's sharing this information. And then another thing that came up was just a lot of myths and misconceptions about organ donation in general. And that's something we do. And our volunteers are amazing backbone to who we are. They're out there preaching our gospel day in and day out by sharing their stories. Having people like Sonia here tonight, who's a recipient, also a donor family member, Durante, who's a kidney recipient. I'm a tissue recipient. So sharing our stories is the only way we're going to help dispel the lack of trust, medical misconceptions, I'm sorry. So it's a lot of work, but we're in it for the long haul.
And I'll piggyback off that as far as Donate Life North Carolina and, you know, what our waiting list looks like and things like that. The survey that we did, the research study that we did as well, in addition to the distrust of the medical community, that was number one. I think it's number one for a lot of our communities across the nation. But two of them that were a bit surprising to us were fear of their body being disfigured, you know, assuming that they have to have a closed casket funeral. And then as well, fear that their organs are unacceptable or too old. And so I think, like Aisha was saying, you just think about these myths that are perpetuated throughout the community and, you know, medical mistrust and things that did happen in the past, and just really honing in on that education and using our voices, using our resources, using each other to help communities better understand what's real, what has happened, what's not factual, and why that trust can be there.
Well, I know when I started volunteering for Living Legacy Foundation at the MVA in Baltimore, and I was there for approximately, I would say about 3 or 4 years, off and on, a few days out of a week, and just being in the community and just listening to the African Americans speak on about organ donation and the mistrust, but for them to see someone in the community that looks like them, that actually have gone through the transplant process, and with me being on dialysis, it kind of helped those individuals understand a little bit more about the importance of wanting to become an organ donor. And I saw the numbers started to increase over a period of time, where a lot of those individuals that did not want to sign up to be an organ donor, they started signing up to become an organ donor. And the saddest day for me was when MVA got a new director and volunteers could not come inside the MVA to basically share their stories and deal with the those individuals that wanted to sign up to become organ donors. So that is very important for the volunteers, the face to be out there in the community, sharing your story, sharing your journey, what you went through, being on dialysis for all those years and actually receiving a transplant. And they look at you now like, wow, you don't look like you was ever sick. But, you know, seeing the face, hearing the story, it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference.
You're right with that, Durante. You hit it right on, is that when they hear our testimonies and when they are able to see and touch how someone has been impacted by organ, eye, and tissue donation, and they can relate that to someone in their family or someone they have known, then they get to connect the dots and they get to understand. And I think that with me volunteering and being out in the community at the various different events, and just meeting people and being able to talk to them about their journey. And the other piece is not just in our community in Maryland and Baltimore, but when you get to be able to go to the various events in various different states and you see how the impact and it affects all of us, no matter where we are and no matter what community we're in. But as long as we get to talk about it and we can share, I think that really helps the community to be able to connect the dots and begin to build that trust in an organization like Living Legacy Foundation, because now they begin to understand what that's all about.
I think for us as well, ambassadors, you know, your story, Sonia, your story, Duranta, you all essentially become the face of our organizations, because it's those real stories. It's that upfront, in your face, living proof of why donation works, you know, the power of saving lives. And, you know, ambassadorship and volunteerism, I feel like, is a key that's also helped us to perpetuate the Decision Project in North Carolina as well. We have a couple of key faith leaders and people that have been with me from the start, where I'm at events and just, you know, all by my lonesome, trying my best to get these people to understand, just to hear me out. And so I think the shift in looking at our grassroots approach and, you know, giving has definitely helped. And so, you know, I just am always so thankful for ambassadors and volunteers. So thank you, even though I'm not a staff of Living Legacy, just hearing your stories over our time together while we've been preparing for this, it's really powerful, and you guys are doing a really good job.
Great, thank you. Anyone else would like to speak on it? All right, moving along to the next question, which is open to everyone. Why is organ donation an important discussion for everyone to have with their families?
I can take this one. I'll start. I think that it's an important discussion to have because you want your family to know your wishes. Just like any other end of life decision, you want to have that ahead of time. I think one of the things that we see oftentimes, unfortunately, is that people haven't had that discussion with their family, and then they're in the hospital unable to communicate and relay what their wishes are. And I think that's the hardest thing to see, is these families that are struggling and going through, you know, enormous grief, and then they have to make this decision on behalf of their loved one if they aren't already designated on their license. So having that conversation early on makes it easier on your family too, and then it's clear what your wishes are.
I'll add to that. When we out at events, we've had people come up to us and say that, you know, Living Legacy approached me about donation for my family member, but I said no because I just didn't know. And so then that sparks a conversation at the table, like, well, it's very important to have that end of life discussion. So please, if you're not ready right now, please take information and share it with your family, because that allows you to know their wishes, and you can tell them your wishes, even if your wishes right now that you aren't comfortable with it, but letting them know what your wishes are and finding out what their wishes are as well. And right now we're coming upon the Thanksgiving season, although we're not going to be together, a lot of us in person. That's the perfect time to start having those conversations too.
I like to speak to that. So I agree with you. You need to have the conversation with your family. Being a donor family and having to experience the decision that my sister had to make when she found out that her son was an organ donor from his license when he was killed tragically. So if something happens to you tragically and you haven't had that conversation, you leave it up to your family members to have to make that decision, especially when it's a child that is, even though he was 21, but he didn't have anyone but his mother. But you leave that decision up to them, and it becomes very hard when they have to, one, think about the tragedy that they're in right now and having to honor their loved one's decision to be an organ donor. But thank God for the compassion of the staff for the Living Legacy Foundation and the nurses at Sinai Hospital during that time. And I actually believe Jessica was on that team then. And how they were so compassionate and was able to walk the family through that process to make the process just a little easier for my sister to be able to make that decision and honor my nephew's Jordan's wishes. So it's very important to have that conversation. It's extremely important, and I just kind of wanted to be able to share that from a family to have experienced that at that particular moment, which may have been a little easier for her had she heard that from her son prior to his death.
I like to speak on the situation. 8 years ago, actually about on this day, my brother had a stroke. And I wish I'd have had the conversation with his wife because I needed a transplanted kidney. And with my brother having a stroke, they did all the neurologist tests, and I could not find it in myself to talk to my sister-in-law about my brother being tested as far as giving to see if we have matched to receive a kidney. And it just ate me up so much inside because of the fact that I chose not to have that conversation, with my sister-in-law. And having this conversation with your family, like you were saying, Sonia, it makes it so much easier for family members to make that decision. But from the grace of God, I did have the kidney transplant 2 weeks later. But as much as I wanted my brother to basically give me a kidney, I just couldn't find myself to have that conversation with his wife.
Those are both such powerful stories. And I think oftentimes, especially if you're on the outside looking into our conversation in our field, it seems like an impossible conversation or a weird conversation or a hard conversation because one, you are talking about death as well as the gift of life. But two, this is it can be a very difficult taboo topic. And I think that's one thing that drew us to the Decision Project and adopting the model. The decisionproject.org literally has a full page, a tab where they talk about how to have the conversation, literally step by step, when to bring it up, what to say, just in general, how to discuss your end of life wishes. And that's something that me and my staff have found really helpful when we're out in the community. And, if they have questions about, well, I want to talk to my mom, we do a lot of work with colleges, but, they'll say, my mom told me to never put that on my license. And of course, we try to spend those few minutes at the table or in that class educating them, but having an awesome team like the Living Legacy Foundation and such foundational work like the decisionproject.org, the website, and that conversation tab has been really, really helpful. So I'll just piggyback on what everyone's saying is that it's so important to talk to your family either way.
Yes, it is. It really is. All right, the next question now, this is basic for everyone. What are some items that everyone watching can take away from tonight?
I'll take this one. I think for me is what we all been saying tonight is having the conversation about organ, eye, and tissue donation. Because like Durante said and Sonia mentioned, by not having that conversation, that it may feel like an opportunity that was missed. And I know, been in the field for a long time, when I was in the hospital services side, like Jessica, you would hear families say, I didn't know, so I said no. And that is a burden. And people feel so uncomfortable talking about something until they need it. And I see that a lot, especially in our community. No one talks about it unless you're affected by it. And then you're affected by it. And now I need it. But we should be having this conversation about end of life like we do with anything else. It's important. We're saving someone else's life. We're decreasing the wait list. And Durante, as our moderator and as our connected purpose, along with Sonia tonight, they can tell you that when they were in that situation, it was dire. And if we educate ourselves more often about donation, then it doesn't have to be dire. So I'll get off my soapbox.
I have to, again, just piggyback off of that. One, talking to your family, no matter who you are, where you live, gaining the confidence to just start the conversation. And we talk the heck out of thedecisionproject.org. So if nothing else, visit thedecisionproject.org. But two, look up your local Donate Life state team website as well, because oftentimes maybe you'll hear of Donate Life or an organ procurement organization like the Living Legacy Foundation. So my only ask would be, in addition to talking with your family and visiting the website, is take the time. If you see us out in the community, we know in the past it's taboo. It feels weird to talk about it. So sometimes you're like covering your eyes, acting like you don't see the table. I encourage you to stop by and talk to us. We're real people. A lot of us sometimes have had fear in the past. I know, just like Aisha said, prior to working in the field, I was extremely hesitant. And it took me taking the time to educate myself and learn more to make that decision for myself. You know, I have the conversation with my family. You know, my sister is all for it. My mom is still making the decision, but we have conversations. We talk about it. She'll send me links. She'll ask me questions. Just love her to death. And she promotes Donate Life and the Decision Project like she works for us, even though she hasn't necessarily made the decision for herself. So I think, again, just talking to your family. And if you see us out in the community, not only come and learn more about who we are, but ask us and help us learn what we can do for you too.
Tanish, I just want to piggyback off of that, because you're right. If to the audience, if you just educate yourself a little bit about what organ and tissue donation is about and how it can help to save someone's life and give them a second chance. Before I got involved with organ and tissue donation, I didn't know anything about organ and tissue donation, except the fact that I knew that I needed a cornea in order for me to be able to see better. So that didn't even make me move. That didn't even make me get up and want to tell a story. That me having the vision and a family saying yes for me to be able to see better didn't get me to move. But the fact that it directly impacted my nephew and the fact that he was able to save 7 lives, that is what got me to move. The fact that he was able to donate and help other families is what made me move. So I think if the audience would educate themselves about the importance of organ and tissue donation, I think more people would be willing to say, oh, I gotta run. Just like they want to get their license at 16. When you get your license at 16, become an organ and tissue donation, because you will save someone else's life and you will help other families. So I think the education and making sure that you communicate with your family is going to be a big part in understanding what this thing is all about.
Everybody is saying and having that conversation with your family. And I saw a question just popped up. Somebody asked, like, how do you have that conversation with family members that may not support it or apprehensive about organ donation, I just say give them the brochure and let them take their time to come to that. It's just as long as you know what their wishes are, and I think continue to provide them with the facts and the truthful information and not the myths. They may never come to that, and that's okay, but just providing them with the information and having that conversation with them, and making sure they understand that if you already are a donor yourself, that this is what I want, and make sure you honor my wishes if something was to happen to me. So good luck with that, Patrick, Mr. Patrick, I'm not sure the name.
One thing I can say that as being the moderator, I'll take away from this is the importance of organ tissue eye donation. It's my donor who selfishly, I have her kidney that sits inside of me. That's the reason why I'm sitting before you now. That's the reason why I'm able to place my feet on the floor every morning and just touch my kidney and say, thank you, Amber, because it's Amber that's here that gave me that second chance at life. And I always tell my wife, hey, I got another woman inside me. She's sitting right here on the right side, Amber. Amber, my best friend, my best friend.
Durante, I have one question, not as a moderator, but I think this is so cool and important, and I'm going to put our colleague on the spot. Jessica, can you tell us about what you're doing from your work of being part of the Decision Project? And I'm hinting at it, so I won't spill the beans.
Well, you guys have really inspired me, just hearing all that you all are doing in the community. So I'm actually in school right now working on my master's degree, and the Decision Project has inspired current paper I'm working on. I'm not finished, so still in progress. But as Aisha and her team have been talking about these communities and there being food deserts there, it got me thinking more about what is going on in Baltimore City in terms of these areas, and what more can we be doing. As Latrice spoke about, we're doing a lot to give away food in these areas, fresh produce and meat, but what more can we continue to do? And it also had me thinking of, like Aisha mentioned, these are areas where a high number of people are waiting for a transplant, and what has led them to needing one. And overall in Baltimore City, you are seeing higher rates of chronic diseases, such as diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease. And when you think of the root cause of all this, a lot of that comes from food. And food can either make you healthy or it can drive disease. So in these food desert areas, one of the big issues is not only access to food, but that there's an imbalance of healthy and unhealthy food going on right now there, because these areas don't have those big supermarkets where there's a variety of food and affordable food as well. They have a lot of corner stores and convenience stores that may not be carrying those nutritious foods. So again, I'm still working on my paper, but I hope to have, learn more through this too, of what we can be doing in addition through the Decision Project to help these communities. I think one of the really great things about working for the LOF is that, yes, while our mission is donation and helping people through transplant, it's really about helping people. And so I love that the Decision Project is about helping people in so many different ways.
Thank you. Durante, I'll give you your job back.
All right, well, thank you. But one thing I love about this Decision Project, I really feel that from the bottom of my heart that this is a beautiful, outstanding project that can do so much for the community and give back to the community. And it's wonderful what Living Legacy Foundation, Aisha, what you're doing, and Denise, what you're doing out there in North Carolina with Donated Life. It's wonderful. And I know that the people in the community, the disadvantaged, they're going to appreciate everything that you all are doing for these individuals in the community, and that this project continue to grow, prosper, help all the people that it can help, and bring the communities together and closer so that they can understand the whole process of organ tissue donation, understand the process of the Decision Project and what it actually means in the community. It means a lot. It means a lot. It really means a lot. So anyone on the panel, do you have any questions or do you have anything else that you would like to comment on and say before it's time to shut it down?
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, I had one quick thing to add. I'm just so thankful for Aisha and the entire Living Legacy Foundation team because I was, a little fresh into my career a couple of years in and had just done this huge statewide research project. And you all being so open and transparent with the information from an industry standpoint, from a professional standpoint, really assisted our team in helping to grow our awareness and our outreach in North Carolina community. So just a big thank you. And people love the Decision Project here so much that I just want to give a quick shout out to Carolina Donor Services, which is another organization here in North Carolina, organ procurement organization, who will now also be bringing on or testing out the Decision Project in a number of communities. So keep up the good work. And I just absolutely love your team and working with you all.
Well, Tanise, I'm going to miss you. Tanise will be leaving the Donate Life community soon and moving to the Northwest Coast. But I think what makes our community, Donate Life, state teams, organ procurement organizations, we are a community of sharing. And if it's not working, what is working next door? And we're going to try it. And the fact that you were willing to ask questions, I learned from you, you learned from us, and now look what you're doing out in the Carolinas. So I just appreciate being surrounded by people like Sonia, Durante, Jessica, who was always there from the beginning. And I appreciate everything that she's doing behind the scenes, and I can't wait for your research. But I thank each and every one of you joining us tonight for our inaugural talk show. Yeah.
Great job.
Really good.
Great job. Great job. I appreciate you guys because you guys have given me more knowledge. So the more knowledge you give me, the more knowledge I can give to someone else. So I appreciate all of you.
I'm going to say, piggyback, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank each and every one of you for sharing your stories, being here tonight, discussing the Decision Project. It's a wonderful thing. And those that are not an organ donor, please visit your local chapter, Maryland, North Carolina, Virginia. Sign up, become an organ tissue donor. It's very important. You can save a second chance. Give somebody a second chance in their life. So give them that second chance in life. Register to become an organ donor. Register to become an organ donor. Make a difference. Make a difference.